Sometime in the early 80s, REO Speedwagon's airplane made an unannounced, middle-of-the-night landing.
This is my friend Kyle MacLachlan, the star of Twin Peaks. And he's telling me about how he discovered a real-life Twin Peaks in rural North Carolina, not far from where he filmed Blue Velvet.
What was on the plane was copious amounts of drugs coming in from South America. Supposedly, Pablo Escobar went looking for other spots, quiet, out-of-the-way places to bring in his cocaine.
My name is Joshua Davis, and I'm an investigative reporter. Kyle and I talk all the time about the strange things we come across, but nothing was quite as strange as what we found in Varnamtown, North Carolina.
There's crooked cops, brother against brother. Everyone's got a story to tell, but does the truth even exist? Welcome to Varnamtown.
Varnamtown is available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 351 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Doing very well.
Good.
It's Valentine's Day week.
Yes.
Love is in the air.
Something's in the air.
Something is. I thought it was love. You might think it's something else. Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout-outs. We had Matt Ford.
Hey, Matt.
Tamara Swantek.
Thank you, Sawantak.
The Marks Brothers.
What's going on, Marks?
Cynthia Morris.
Hey, Cynthia.
Tamara Winchester.
What's happening, Tamara?
Lisa.
Hey, there's Lisa.
Sonia Bellomini.
La Bellomini.
Adrian Sunbay.
Hey, thanks, Adrian.
Sue T.
Good old Sue.
Tammy Boone.
There's Boone.
Jan.
Hey, Jan.
Megan.
Hey, Megan.
Susan Dew.
What's up, Dew?
And Lisa Boyk.
Hey, Lisa.
Yeah, so we appreciate the new support. And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Mitch Lones.
Hey, thanks, Mitch from the firm.
Yeah, been with us a long time. We also had some great PayPal donations from Dana Abrams.
What's going on, Dana?
And Deanna Johnson.
Hey, thanks, Deanna.
So thanks to everyone who helps out the show. Right now, we have an episode out on TCAT. It's on the Broken Arrow murders. Robert and Michael Bever killed 5 members of their family in 2015 in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma.
A little rough.
It's a very brutal episode when it comes to the details of what these 2 eldest sons of the family did to their parents and their siblings. And it's hard to sugarcoat it.
Absolutely.
And it's the reasons why they said they did it.
Yeah.
That are also kind of, mind-blowing.
Still shaking my head from it.
Yeah. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I'm ready.
We're talking about the disappearance of Relisha Rudd. 8-year-old Relisha Rudd went missing from a homeless shelter in Washington, D.C. on March 1st, 2014. In the months leading up to her disappearance, she befriended a male staff member named Khalil Tatum, who was known to interact with young girls living at the shelter. After Relisha's disappearance, Tatum's wife was found shot to death in a motel room. Days later, he was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound in a city park. Relisha Rudd is still missing almost 10 years later. So, this is an unsolved disappearance, but we also have a murder and what appears to be a suicide.
Yeah. Just bad stuff all the way around.
And when you hear that this guy Tatum was known to interact with young girls living at the shelter, that statement alone kind of gave me the creepy crawlies. Yeah. Because the word interact, I think, is a euphemism.
Definitely gives you concerns.
Relisha Rudd was born on October 29th, 2005. She was 8 years old when she went missing. She lived with her mother, Shamika Young, and her 2 younger brothers. At the time of Relisha's disappearance, her mother was in a relationship with a man named Antonio Wheeler, who was the father of the 2 younger boys. Relisha also has an older brother. Their father is Irving Rudd. Irving Rudd filed for sole custody of his children in 2012, but was only allowed visitation. According to the Charlie Project, he was convicted of involuntary manslaughter in 1992 and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. The victim was his 17-month-old daughter. He was released in 2002.
That's alarming.
It's concerning, no doubt. And my thought is it definitely played a role when in 2012 he went to file for sole custody of his children. My thought is if you've got an involuntary manslaughter conviction on your record, going to be tough to get sole custody.
Yeah, I think they're definitely going to scrutinize that heavily.
Yeah, my thoughts as well. Shamika Young lived in homeless shelters as a young girl. She entered foster care at the age of 6 and moved often. According to the Charlie Project, she was diagnosed with a mild mental disability and spent time in psychiatric residential treatment as an adolescent. Relisha was born when she was 19 years old. Some of Shamika's Facebook posts reflect her thoughts on her difficult life. One post from 2012 reads, per the Washington Post, "Sometimes I wish my mother didn't have me. And sometimes I wonder how many people want to see me dead. And sometimes I wonder why I have kids. And sometimes I wonder why the world is the way it is. I wonder who I am."
Well, think about her life. I mean, living in and out of homeless shelters since she was 6 years old, under the foster care system. Not the easiest life.
No, not at all. I mean, some of these posts, though, I think if you saw a friend make these, you'd be concerned. Now, some of these are just questions that we all have. Why is the world the way it is? I ask that question all the time.
Every time we record, I ask that question.
Who am I? I ask that question sometimes.
Sometimes you ask me who I am.
Well, that's just because my memory's fading.
Oh, yeah, okay.
After Relisha was born, her family moved into an apartment complex in Washington, D.C., where gang members were known to live. There was once a shooting at the complex where 7 people were injured. They moved out in 2007. The Washington Post obtained files showing at least 3 complaints about the children to the Child and Family Services Agency. The complaints against Shamika were eventually dropped. She didn't lose custody of any of her children until after Relisha went missing. So, when I said that the father would have a hard time getting sole custody with this involuntary manslaughter charge on his record, I still believe that's true. What I probably should have added, though, is that, if the mother is going through a lot herself or is into drugs or, there could be a reason why maybe he would make a better parent. I didn't say that. And I'm not saying that it's true in this case. I'm just saying it could be.
Yeah, I think it's a tough job to have to determine what parent would be best for the child, who can provide the stability a child needs, who can give the shelter, the food, all these different factors that children's services feel like a kid needs to survive in this world. And I think that could be kind of tough sometimes.
Yeah, I think sometimes it could be tough because both parents are doing very well. It could be tough because both parents are not doing great.
Yeah. Which one's not doing great more? Does that make sense?
No, but I understand what you're getting at. And then sometimes I think the question is very easily answered. One parent is doing way better than the other. And when I say doing better, I don't just mean making more money. I mean, stability in their life and, kind of all of that. But I still agree with you that cannot be an easy job. So going back to these complaints, the first complaint was filed in July 2007. A social worker believed Relisha showed signs of physical abuse, but authorities were unable to determine how the injuries occurred. And again, I think some of these can be very tough as well. Remember, Gibbs, back to when your kids were young. I mean, weren't they always falling down? They had bruises. And now I get it. There are differences between a bruised leg, knee, shin, something like that, versus some real serious signs of abuse.
Sure.
So I don't know to what level these signs rose. What I am saying is that kids fall down a lot. They run into things. They play hard.
And it doesn't always mean abuse.
No, it doesn't always mean that. But I also don't think you can dismiss them all out of hand and say, that was just kids being kids. No, because sometimes it is abuse.
Yeah, because sometimes that's the alibi, the cover, because that's what these individuals use.
In April 2010, a social worker noted that one of Relisha's siblings was not receiving proper medical attention after a surgery, and the family was living in what was deemed environmentally unsafe conditions. Okay, that's casting a pretty broad net.
It really is.
But it doesn't sound good. At least 5 of Shamika Young's former landlords filed cases against her for breach of contract. After their last eviction, the family moved into a motel for 3 months. At one point, they were living with Shamika's sister, Ashley Young. She told them they could no longer live with her because she was on a government housing subsidy, and this strained her relationship with Shamika. In 2012, Shamika and the children moved into the D.C. Shelter for Families, which was the former D.C. General Hospital. It was the largest shelter in D.C. and housed hundreds of families and up to 600 children at one point.
Eventually, if you have nowhere else to go, this is where you're going to find yourself before you find yourself on the streets. So thank goodness a place like this is available, but also how sad that you have 600 kids at one point living in this facility.
You're right on both things. I mean, luckily, there are some of these types of shelters for people when they need them, but man, 600 kids at one point, that's scary. But I also think, as bad as some of this stuff sounds, and I'm not trying to make it sound bad, it's factual, it is painting a picture of how tough life was, I think, for the family. Residents at the shelter complained about heating outages, mice, bed bugs, other insects, and even raccoons. Relisha told her relatives the shelter was infested and that the food wasn't good.
Well, I think sometimes shelters are just brick and mortar. I think other shelters offer more. I think it depends on the funding and, how much money do they have to put towards it. I don't know the scenario here.
No, but if you think about trying to feed that many people, if there were 600 children at one point, how many people were there in total?
Yeah.
Having to feed them 3 times a day, let's say, that's a lot of food. And so I'm sure it wasn't the best that you could buy. They got to take the dollars that they have, the budget, stretch that food as far as it'll go. I think what was known for sure was that Relisha wanted to be away from the shelter as much as possible. She sometimes faked asthma attacks so that she could stay at relatives' homes. Other adults said Relisha came to school hungry with dirty clothes and that she didn't want to leave. And sadly, this is something that my wife has experienced throughout the years. She's been teaching for over 20 years. I can't tell you the number of winter coats that we've gone out and bought because, second, third, fourth graders are coming to school in the dead of winter with no coat on.
Yeah.
And my wife, she ain't having it.
No.
So we've got to go to Burlington or wherever and buy a bunch of coats. And I have no problem with that. It makes me feel good, but I feel for some of these kids, and I know she does as well. There's been so many of them that she's just wanted to bring home with her because she feels horrible. Relisha's teachers described her as a quiet and well-behaved student. She loved art, and her mother said she wanted to be both a model and a basketball player. One girl who lived at the DC shelter said that Relisha always gave her hugs in the morning, which made her smile and feel better.
That's nice. You know, it actually puts a smile on my face.
It does. Here is a well-behaved student. She has goals and aspirations. It sounds like she was treating others in a very respectful, loving way, just the kind of thing that you would hope that a kid would do. Now, it's not her fault that, the family is struggling. I'm sure if she was old enough, she'd probably go down to the Burger King and get a job to help out. Mm-hmm. Seems like the type of person that she was, but she's young. And I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way. I'm not blaming all of this on Shamika either, right? People get into bad spots and sometimes it can be very tough to get out of. Now, a lot of us have family who kind of step up, help us out, let us live with them for periods of time till we, get back on our feet. If you don't have that, then it can be even tougher. Shannon Smith, a cheerleading coach who helped Relisha at school, told the Washington Post, who failed Relisha? I believe everybody failed that girl. The school, the system, the doctors, the police, and everybody else that should have had something to do with her. And that to me is a very powerful statement, but it's one you normally hear after something bad happens. And I'm sure there maybe are people who are saying it as it's going on, but normally we see it come out in the media after someone is murdered or someone disappears.
They always say it takes a village to raise a kid. And I think in this case, she's saying the village failed.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what she's saying. Shannon Smith told the Washington Post that she once returned late from chaperoning a school trip and found Relisha and one of her brothers still waiting at school for a ride. It was not uncommon for them to wait for their ride for a long time, but this was unusually late. She claimed that she called Shamika Young and offered to drive the children home. Shamika didn't give an address and she hung up on her. Instead, she called the school and told the children to leave on foot.
Not really putting the mom in a great light.
No, again, I'm trying not to be, too tough on this woman because it does sound like she had some issues of her own growing up.
For sure.
And then no doubt she's having trouble at this point in her life. But to hang up on this teacher who's, offering to bring the kids home and instead say, just walk home, that doesn't seem like a great decision. Now, maybe she didn't know this teacher at all. Maybe she hadn't been to parent-teacher night. But would you rather take your chances with a teacher who works at the school, if you can verify that, or your kids walking home?
Maybe she didn't want the teacher to see where they lived.
That's possible as well. It's actually a very good point. According to the Washington Post, the following events could not be corroborated with the police. Shannon Smith and a school security guard told the Post that the children were found late at night at a laundromat and the Child and Family Services Agency was notified. Shamika's mother denied this allegation and said that Shamika often went hungry just so her kids could eat.
Now, there's a mom.
And that's probably true. Shamika told the Washington Post, think what you want to think. Only God knows the truth. Another complaint against Shamika was filed in November 2013. A social worker reported that one of the boys was thrown to the ground and slapped until his lip bled. The police got conflicting stories about who hit him, and no charges were filed. Relatives later said the reports were exaggerated or false.
Well, I also think once you're on that radar, you could have little instances that probably would not be an issue become an issue.
You mean people filing reports or complaints about stuff that they otherwise wouldn't?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying about that. Relisha and her family lived at the shelter for over a year. During that time, they befriended 51-year-old Khalil Tatum, who worked as a janitor. Tatum was hired by the Community Partnership for the Prevention of Homelessness, a nonprofit that operated the shelter and other programs for homeless people in Washington, D.C. Khalil Tatum offered Relisha gifts, some of which were expensive, such as a tablet. He took her out of the shelter for outings like manicures, the mall, or the movies. He also took her out of the shelters for sleepovers at his home.
I have that little thing in my stomach that's saying that just doesn't sound right.
No, it doesn't sound right at all. Now, if he bought her a tablet, could you make the argument that, this is just a man trying to do something nice? Yeah, I guess you could. When you get into the area of them going out to, get a manicure, him taking her to the mall, to the movies by himself, and then especially to his home for sleepovers, those are all getting into the area of just really crossing the line, in my opinion, because I kind of go back to, well, we're not going to let the teacher bring the kids home in her car, but we're going to let this 51-year-old man take Relisha out to all these different places alone and allow her to sleep over at his house. I'm struggling with that. Relisha was close to Tatum and called her goddaddy. Sources indicate that she viewed her time with Tatum as an escape from the shelter. And I'm sure that it was, right? She made no bones about it. She did not like that shelter.
Well, I'm sure she was happy to go to the mall and get manicures and be out of that shelter and having money spent on her and being doted on.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't like that? But she's a kid. She's going to like that. Kids like gifts, presents. It's the parents' job to kind of say what's acceptable.
Right.
And where, does the line get drawn? Now, you could make an argument that Shamika felt comfortable with this Tatum guy.
Sure.
And was okay with him taking her to the mall. Now, I don't care how comfortable you are. I'm not okay with the sleepover. I mean, lifelong family friend. Yeah. A janitor that I just met in the last few months, 51 years old. No, I can't see it.
And only taking her, not the other kids.
Yes. And why is that?
Right.
You got to ask yourself that question. True Crime All the Time Unsolved is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Let's face it, sometimes multitasking can be overwhelming. Like when your favorite podcast is playing and the person next to you is talking and your car fan is blasting, all while you're trying to find the perfect parking spot. But then again, sometimes multitasking is easy, like quoting with Progressive Insurance. They do the hard work of comparing rates so you can find a great rate that works for you, even if it's not with them. Give their nifty comparison tool a try, and you might just find getting the rate and coverage you deserve is easy. All you need to do is visit Progressive's website to get a quote with all the coverages you want, like comprehensive and collision coverage or personal injury protection. Then you'll see Progressive's direct rate, and their tool will provide options from other companies all lined up and ready to compare. So it's simple to choose the rate and coverages you like. Press play on comparing auto rates. Quote at Progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Tatum was known for having contact with other young girls at the shelter, but not young boys. He gave other girls money and expensive gifts.
I mean, it has to be somewhat of a flag, or should have been somewhat of a flag to the people managing this place.
Well, for me, it depends on who knew and what did they know, right? What did management know? What did Shamika know? Because it was said that this was in violation of the shelter's no fraternization rule. However, it was also said this rule was not strictly enforced at the shelter. Several mothers told the Washington Post that Tatum offered their daughters money in the view of other staff members. So it doesn't sound like it was a big secret, meaning somebody there knew or should have known.
But turned a blind eye to it?
Yes, or never escalated it up. That could be as well. Some mothers who lived at the shelter said they didn't trust the staff because some of them were known to have sex with young female residents. Well, now you're in the area of there's multiple people doing things that they shouldn't be doing. So when you say turn a blind eye, yes, they're going to turn a blind eye to what Tatum's doing if some of these other people are doing the same exact thing.
Yeah, these individuals are taking advantage of these younger females in their current situation, in their parents' current situation, and no one's keeping it in check.
Relisha's relatives didn't question her relationship with Tatum. Antonio Wheeler, Relisha's stepfather, told the Post he never got a bad vibe from Tatum. He always turned Relisha to her mother when he was supposed to. Relisha often asked her relatives to call Tatum when she couldn't spend time with him. So that does answer something. Now, whether you think that it answers them correctly, that's a different question. I get it. They didn't get bad. I get it. They didn't get bad vibes from him, but should they have?
Yeah, I mean, he's not the child's uncle.
He's no relation whatsoever.
Yeah, he's just somebody that worked at the shelter, that befriended her, and now, for whatever reason, the family is okay with her going over to his place. And I don't know. We don't know. Maybe the mom went over to the place sometimes as well. Maybe she scouted it out. Maybe, that's how she felt okay with it.
But no matter what we say, it doesn't seem to make sense.
It really doesn't. I mean, you just have to ask yourself, especially when you find out that he's in the habit of giving other young women, girls.
Well, we know that, but we don't know
if they knew that.
If her family knew that.
Right. And I'm thinking if they did know that, at least I'm hoping if they knew that at the time, that probably would have made they would have made a different decision.
I just have a feeling there's, a ton of listeners yelling, no way would I ever, let my daughter go spend the night.
Your 8-year-old daughter spend the night at a 50-some-year-old man's house?
No.
But
I'm trying to balance that out with not coming down too hard on Shamika because I'm not in her shoes.
Absolutely. Neither one of us have ever lived in a shelter. We don't know what that's like. And we don't know if some opportunity came up with somebody that seemed really nice that your kids could get out of the shelter for the night. Maybe you'd be like, at least they're getting out of the shelter. Maybe they're going to be able to take a bath, a shower, and sleep in a place that has heat. Maybe get a good sandwich or something to eat. Maybe that would change your mind. But we're not, like you said, we're not in her shoes.
Khalil Tatum was a convicted felon. He was incarcerated from 1993 to 2003 and from 2004 to 2011 for burglary, larceny, and breaking and entering.
So troubled past.
Yeah, troubled past, but the one thing I did notice was that none of those crimes were sexual in nature.
Right.
Doesn't make it right that he did those things. A 2012 report found that the Community Partnership for the Prevention of Homelessness employed people who had not undergone criminal background checks or drug and alcohol testing, as required by contract with the city of Washington, D.C. The Community Partnership acknowledged that it retained 6 employees with criminal convictions when it took over the contract to run the shelter. Okay, this seems like a problem to me. If you're required to do background checks and test for drugs and alcohol, according to the contract you have with the city, and you're not following that, that is a problem.
Yeah, I think, where are the QC checks, right? Who's coming in to review the paperwork and making sure that the partnership is doing what they're supposed to?
At a D.C. Council committee hearing, Sue Marshall, the executive director of the community partnership, acknowledged that the shelter fired at least 4 employees for inappropriate relationships with residents.
Disturbing, but at least they were fired.
Well, yeah, I was going to say disturbing that they had to fire so many, but at least they acted upon those 4. Tatum and his wife, Andrea, lived in an apartment in the city. They were married for 24 years. During the marriage, Andrea had a relationship with a man named Gerald Wills. They had known each other for 30 years, and he helped take care of Andrea when her husband was in prison. They lived in a car together for 4 years when they were both struggling with drug addiction. He was described as her other husband. In the final decade of her life, according to Wills, Andrea was sober and enjoyed spending time with her grandchildren. Andrea also volunteered with her church and helped the homeless community.
So, I think that provides a little bit of insight of maybe why the mom was okay with Relisha going to the apartment and staying over, because maybe she knew Andrea was going to be there, and knowing that Andrea, had grandkids and, was a church-going person and helped out at the shelter, maybe that gave her the security that she needed.
Yeah, it's possible. Neighbors describe the Tatums as quiet, normal people. According to one neighbor, they wanted to retire in 10 years and spend their time helping families in need, and Khalil had been mentoring young men in the neighborhood. Gerald Wills said he never saw Relisha with the Tatums, but Andrea once mentioned that she was at her house. Wills believes that Andrea discovered something and was going to go to the police, and that was why she was killed. And we mentioned it up front that Tatum's wife was found dead. We'll talk about that more in detail later in the episode. Khalil Tatum filed for divorce in February 2014. The separation was listed as mutual and voluntary. Andrea's daughter would later tell the police that she also considered leaving him. Later that month, on February 26th, Shamika Young asked Tatum to take Relisha away from the shelter. She would later say she wanted her to get out of the shelter because it was a dirty and dangerous environment with no playground. And I think this is going back to, some of the things you've talked about, Gibbs. Is it possible that Shamika wanted Relisha to, experience some better things than what was, there available in the shelter? And it sounds like that was part of it.
Yeah, maybe she felt like her daughter would thrive outside of the shelter.
That day, Tatum and Relisha were captured on camera walking down the hallway at the Holiday Inn Express in Northeast D.C. February 26th also marked Relisha's 5th unexcused absence from Payne Elementary School. The staff scheduled a parent-teacher conference for March 5th. On March 1st, Relisha was captured on camera walking past the fountain in front of the Days Inn on New York Avenue, which is across the street from the Holiday Inn Express, where she was seen on February 26th. Relisha and Tatum were captured walking through the lobby into a room. It's not known if Relisha left the Days Inn hotel alive. And I can't imagine this is what Shamika had in mind.
No.
When she asked Tatum to take Relisha and just get her out of the shelter. A 51-year-old man taking an 8-year-old girl who is of no relation to him to a hotel doesn't look real great. After Relisha was last seen with Tatum on March 1st, he continued going to work and was seen around D.C. between March 2nd and March 20th. But Relisha was not with him any of those times. Shamika attended the parent-teacher conference on March 5th and was informed about support services to make sure that her daughter came to school. Many of Relisha's previous absences were excused because Shamika told the school she was being cared for by Dr. Tatum.
Dr. Tatum. Is that like the same thing as me calling me Dr. Gibby because of that thing I have on my wall?
Yeah.
That I got in the mail?
I think you've called yourself doctor, lawyer,
PhD.
PhD. I've heard you refer to yourself as many things that I know not to be true. Some initial reports indicated Relisha attended school on March 5th and March 7th, but the police later said the last confirmed sighting occurred on March 1st. On March 10th, school officials called Khalil Tatum, believing he was a doctor, and told him he had to give medical documentation for Relisha's continued absences from school. He said he was treating her for neurological problems and would discharge her by the end of the next week.
Just going along with the lie.
I mean, this is like DiCaprio in Catch Me If You Can. Relisha accumulated 5 more unexcused absences, but her brothers continued attending school. March 13th marked her 10th unexcused absence. The school was required by law to call the Children and Family Services Agency to report educational neglect. As reported by the Washington Post, a social worker noted that Relisha's grandmother said she was ill and in the care of Tatum.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out why so much trust is given to this man, Tatum, to care for your daughter, your granddaughter, your niece. What was so special about him that everybody put their trust in to him?
Well, and we've tried to give, a little bit of benefit of the doubt, right, throughout the episode, but it gets harder and harder to do so. So, from Shamika's own statement, she wanted Relisha to go with Tatum to get out of the shelter because it was nasty. Okay, I understand that point that she was making, but for how long without coming back? Yeah. If you say for a couple of hours, 3, you're going to the mall. I wasn't even crazy about that, but let's just say that was it. 5, 10 days, 13 days later, and she hasn't come back.
You're not going to go see her?
Yeah, something is just not right here. I'm really struggling.
And I'm thinking, man, this Tatum guy, Dr. Tatum, I think was maybe really good at snowing these individuals.
Well, as most of these types of people are, they're good con men. Yeah, I think back to the Jan Broberg case and the movie and the documentary. How good of a con man was that guy to be able to manipulate her family into getting as close to her as he did?
I remember that guy. He really took that family on a long ride.
Yeah, and it was like he had an answer for everything, right? That's how these guys operate.
Yeah.
The CFSA didn't consider this a high priority case. At that point, it wasn't until March 19th that a social worker called Tatum to arrange a meeting later that day. Relisha had missed over 30 days of school by this point, but the majority of those days were excused absences. Tatum told the social worker to meet him at the DC shelter. He left work early that day, and he wasn't there when the social worker arrived. And it was at that point that the social worker learned that Tatum was not a doctor. She called the police and a child abuse hotline. So I think this guy knew, right? He set up this meeting. He had no intentions of being there, because how was he going to validate the fact that he was this Dr. Tatum? He couldn't.
Right.
The police questioned Shamika about her daughter's whereabouts. She said that Relisha and Dr. Tatum went to a medical conference in Atlanta on March 8th, and she didn't know when they would be back. She claimed she last spoke to her daughter on March 17th.
Medical conference.
So let me ask you this question. If this guy is a doctor who's attending medical conferences? Why is he doing janitorial work at the shelter?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? Look, nothing against doing janitorial work. Well, I've done that. But you wouldn't be doing that if you had a
thriving medical practice.
It just doesn't line up.
No.
I mean, if you're going over there just to volunteer your time, that's one thing.
But it would be somewhere in the area of medicine.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be to clean up spills. And then I think the other thing we have to talk about is Shamika saying she spoke with Relisha on the 17th. And we said earlier, the last confirmed sighting of her was on the 1st. That's a long time.
But if she was going to a conference with Dr. Tatum, supposedly on the 8th, I don't know, wouldn't you want to see your kid before she left town?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's so many head scratchers here that it's tough. It's really tough. The police couldn't get in contact with Tatum. All of their calls went directly to voicemail. Well, you know who Dr. Tatum doesn't want to talk to besides the social worker?
The police.
The police.
Yeah.
They're going to have some very difficult questions for him that he's not going to be able to answer easily. One of Tatum's relatives went to his apartment to see if Relisha was there, but no one was home. Shamika didn't want to file a police report because she said Relisha was safe.
But how does she know that?
I don't know, other than she's truly putting so much faith in Khalil Tatum. According to the Washington Post, Shamika gave various explanations for Relisha's absences and said she was with her grandmother. When Shamika was interviewed by a social worker, she said Tatum was Relisha's godfather. She said she met with Tatum and asked him to return Relisha, but he did not. So now it's coming out that she gave a number of different versions. And like we always say, that never makes you look good when your stories don't stay consistent.
And do you do that because you're embarrassed? Do you do this because other reasons?
Yeah, I don't know that it has to be nefarious. You know, it could be that you finally have figured out that maybe you didn't do the right thing. And now you're trying to make yourself not look as bad. There could be various reasons for that. Within hours, Relisha was labeled a critically missing child, which meant her case was of the highest priority. Investigators believe Khalil Tatum shot his wife on the night of March 19th or early on March 20th of 2014. Andrea Tatum was found dead in a room at the Red Roof Inn in Oxon Hill, Maryland on the morning of March 20th. There were no signs of a struggle. A gun had been placed behind her left ear. The bullet went through her skull, brain, and exited just in front of her right ear. That's a pretty grisly visual.
It's a disturbing picture.
Andrea spoke to her friend Edna Young at 6 p.m. on March 19th. She said she was in bed for the evening because she was going to babysit her grandchildren the next day. However, the Tatums checked into the Red Roof Inn in Oxon Hill at 10:04 p.m. on the 19th. Both of their vehicles were parked outside. They were with 3 other people, but those individuals left after an hour and a half. One of them told investigators he returned at 5:40 a.m. on the 20th to pick Tatum up and saw Andrea lying on the bed, but Tatum wouldn't let him into the room.
Well, it sounds like there was a good reason why Tatum didn't want him in the room.
Yeah, most likely Andrea was dead by that point. And I think we have to go back to, Khalil filing for divorce. And we mentioned that, Andrea later died and that it was thought that she potentially knew something and was going to go to the police about it. Well, it's pretty hard not to think that if that was true, it had something to do with Relisha.
I think that's the conclusion that you find yourself headed to.
Now, why the two of them are at the Red Roof Inn together in March, I don't know. Maybe they're trying to reconcile. We don't have that information. But neither Relisha nor Khalil Tatum were found at the motel. The police issued 2 Amber Alerts for Relisha. The first Amber Alert contained a description of a white GMC truck that Tatum used after leaving the motel. It was found that same day. It identified a man named Ricky Sheridan Lyles, but his name was not included in the second Amber Alert because the police didn't believe he was traveling with Relisha. On March 21st, Khalil Tatum was charged with the murder of his wife, Andrea. The search expanded throughout the East Coast. On the 22nd, the police discovered that on March 2nd, the day after he was last seen with Relisha, Tatum purchased a box of 42-gallon trash bags, a shovel, and lime.
It's not good.
It's never good in a true crime case if you come home from the Home Depot with big trash bags, a shovel, and lime. On March 25th, 2014, the FBI released the video of Tatum and Relisha walking down the hallway of the Holiday Inn on Bladensburg Road, Northeast, on February 26th. On the 27th, D.C. Police Chief Kathy Lanier announced the search had turned into a recovery mission, which indicated that the police believed Relisha was dead. Sources familiar with the case told the Washington Post that day that a grand jury was impaneled to investigate possible obstruction charges against Shamika Young. And it was probably natural to wonder at what point the police were going to look at Shamika. Not so much maybe as the cause of Relisha's disappearance, but for the multiple stories she had told.
Not really knowing where her daughter was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some of those things, you know, it was going to happen at some point. Shamika said she was cooperating and believed she was unfairly portrayed as a bad mother. And I think people are probably going to go both ways on that. There are some people who are going to give her the benefit of the doubt. There are some people who are going to say, with all the facts known, that the actions she took were not those of a good mother.
I can see people being on both sides of that fence.
Again, all we have is the information that, we could uncover. There might be more that would paint her in a different light. On March 31st, the police discovered Khalil Tatum's body in a shed at the Kenilworth Park and Aquatic Gardens in D.C. Investigators had received tips that they may find Relisha's gravesite there. Tatum shot himself with the same gun used to kill his wife. He'd been dead for about 36 hours, but Relisha was nowhere to be found. Investigators did an extensive search of the park, but called it off a few days later. In the aftermath of her disappearance and the deaths of Khalil and Andrea Tatum, lawmakers and the public criticized the Child and Family Services Agency for failing to act sooner and for failing to remove Relisha and her siblings from their home environment. Days after Relisha went missing, her stepfather posted pictures on Facebook showing a new cell phone, shoes, and large stacks of money. This led people to speculate that she was sold into child sex trafficking. Washington, D.C. is considered a hub for sex trafficking, according to Natalie Wilson from the Black and Missing Foundation.
I don't understand why this guy is posting pictures of a new cell phone, new shoes, and a large stack of money if they're at a shelter. His kids are probably wanting to eat they want to eat some better food. So maybe instead of buying those shoes and that new phone and showing off that stack of cash.
Well, I don't know if he's showing it off or he is putting it out there as this all came from Khalil Tatum.
But the timing doesn't look good at all.
No, it doesn't. I mean, you could see why people are speculating that she was possibly sold. Because you're right. If they're living in the shelter, then where are they getting all this stuff? Or why are they getting this stuff is maybe even the more important question. Shamika was investigated by a grand jury. No indictments were ever handed down. Tatum's nephew, Deshaun Tatum, told the Washington Post that his uncle loved his wife with the utmost passion, and that if he killed her, it was due to the stress of the police investigation. He said, if you're under so much stress with everyone constantly saying, you did this, you did that, it's going to make you turn crazy, pretty much. It's too much stress on the mind. It's too much stress on the heart. He said about Relisha's disappearance, if anything, my uncle took care of that little girl. It was like she was his own daughter. In May 2014, Shamika's mother, Melissa Young, sought a restraining order against her daughter, alleging that Shamika Young and her partner, Antonio Wheeler, assaulted her. Shamika Young blamed her mother for Relisha's disappearance and said Relisha was in her mother's care at the time she went missing. At a prayer vigil, they got into an argument when Shamika reportedly said, why did you have to give my baby away? Whew. So there's so much going on in this case, Gibbs. It's almost difficult to wrap your head around all of it.
Sure. You got mother and daughter arguing. You've got the nephew of Tatum saying, my uncle was a good guy. He would never do something like this. And if he did, it's because all this crazy stuff drove him to that. But he would never hurt this little girl.
But I really want to zero in on this report that, during this argument, Shamika said to her mother, why did you have to give my baby away?
Yeah.
I mean, what does that mean?
That's an intriguing statement to say, because is she saying, you gave my baby away to Dr. Tatum? Did you give my baby away to some stranger?
Some sex trafficking organization?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. A city report issued on September 2nd, 2014, found that poor communication led to mistakes in Relisha's case. Officials failed to act because they wrongly assumed others had. However, the report found no justifiable government actions would have prevented Relisha's tragic disappearance.
Yeah, I don't know if you could say that 100%.
No, I don't either, because if she had been taken out of the home, would the opportunity still have existed for whatever happened to her to still happen? I don't know that it would have.
Yeah. I just think there was way too many errors with how the school handled it, how the shelter was handled, how the mom seemed pretty
laissez-faire.
Yeah.
About letting her daughter go with this 51-year-old man. Yeah, again, it's tough to put the blame on people without every specific fact, right? We don't have everything, but if we're just speaking generally, I think there were a lot of people who could have done something different in this case.
Sure.
I'll at least put it that way. This report recommended over 24 policy changes regarding how schools deal with unexcused absences, background checks for shelter employees, and fraternization between families and staff. An anonymous law enforcement official told the Washington Post in 2016 that he believes Khalil Tatum was pimping, that was the word that he used, Relisha for himself and others. So that really is going down the avenue of, sex trafficking, or if not her being sold to some organization, that maybe he was doing it himself.
And if that's true, then he's not this great guy that his nephew thought he is or thinks he is.
Well, I don't think he was a great guy. He shot his wife in the head.
Yeah.
And killed her.
There's no excuse for that. Well, if this is true, then he's a bigger POS
than what we already knew.
Right.
The official also speculated that Tatum's wife found out what he was doing, and that was why he killed her.
I mean, you can see how that could make sense.
Well, and all along in my mind, that seemed like the most logical explanation. Now, they were getting a divorce or in the process of getting a divorce. So people have killed for that reason. Maybe he didn't want to pay her.
Yeah.
But when you factor in that he's spending time with this 8-year-old girl, I think it's very reasonable to think that his wife found out about it. He wasn't going to risk her going to the authorities, and he silenced her. I mean, I think it's a very plausible theory.
Yeah.
In April 2016, the police searched the National Arboretum for evidence, but found nothing. Shamika Young told Fox 5 that she didn't know why the police would want to search the Arboretum. Her mother, Melissa, told the outlet that the family was kept in the dark and she had not spoken to the police in 2 years. Young added that she had made amends with Shamika and they realized Relisha may be dead. In late January 2018, the police concluded a search of Anacostia Park in southeast DC. A police spokesperson said they received information that potential evidence was found in the park, but all searches came up negative. The DC General Shelter closed down on October 30th, 2018. Mayor Muriel Bowser promised to replace it with 7 smaller shelters across the city. The shelter did not officially close until 2019, and several replacement shelters have not been opened. So it does sound like that shelter needed to go. I get it. It was a place to house a lot of people, but from all the articles and everything we read about it, it sounded like it was not operated very well at all.
It sounds like they couldn't manage it.
In December 2018, the police followed up on a tip at the DC General Homeless Shelter, but nothing was found. In February 2020, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and the Metropolitan Police Department released an age progression photo of Relisha at age 14. In 2022, they released a second age progression photo of what Relisha may look like at 16. And in 23, they released a third photo of her at age 17. And you can view all of these photos on the NCMEC website. March 1st, 2024 will mark 10 years since Relisha was last seen alive. Every July 11th is Relisha Rudd Remembrance Day in DC, which helps continue to raise awareness for her case. At the time of her disappearance, Relisha Rudd was 4 feet tall and was wearing a purple winter jacket and pink boots. She is an African-American female with black hair and brown eyes. If you have any information about Relisha, you can contact the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department at 202-727-9099 or text the tip line at 50411. You can contact the Youth and Family Services Division at 202-576-6768 or the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-THE-LOST. The FBI is offering up to $25,000 for information leading to Relisha's location and return. You can contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or you can call your local FBI office. You can also submit an anonymous tip online. So, as we wrap this one up, I already said it, Giz, but it's a real head scratcher. I mean, this girl was only 8 years old when she went missing.
Yeah.
So I think because we're so many years on, it's not that people haven't shown back up. There are examples of, kids who went missing and then, showed back up 10, 15 years later. But I think there's also, unfortunately, some other possible explanations.
Yeah. I mean, why did he buy a shovel, industrial strength trash bags, and lime?
And lime. I mean, that to me is a pretty bad sign. Now, you could make the argument that those were for his wife, possibly.
Or something different than both those.
Just general maintenance.
Maybe.
But it's, in my mind, not a great sign.
No.
That this much time has gone by. This man who was known to have been with her for quite a long period of time killed his wife, ended his own life, and then this girl's never been found. So,
and he chose not to show up to meet the social worker at the shelter. Why is that? You know, I mean,
because I think he was up to no good.
Yeah.
And he wasn't going to be able to explain to Dr. Tatum. I don't know how he was going to answer the question of what he was doing with this 8-year-old girl for that amount of time, that stretch of time.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough conversation to have.
It really is. When on camera, you're seen at multiple hotels.
Yeah.
You're going to have to try to explain all of that. And then on top of that, if your wife found out and she was about ready to blow the whistle on you, I mean,
yeah,
I think some of these things kind of fit in the spots where they should. Now, I can't say for sure that that's the way it all went down, but it kind of does seem like that's the most plausible explanation. The only other thing is that, you know, if Relisha is alive out there, could she have been sold into one of these big sex trafficking organizations, maybe even taken overseas somewhere? That's a possibility.
And then I feel bad for the mom. I mean, she lost her daughter. She doesn't know if her daughter's dead. She doesn't, or alive out there, you know, being harmed.
Yeah, I think you have to feel bad for her, regardless of how you feel about some of the parenting choices that she made.
Yeah.
You cannot agree with those, and I'm sure a lot of people don't. But no one wants to see somebody, you know, lose a child.
And then you think about her dad that didn't get the opportunity to get custody of her. What would have happened if that went the other way?
Mm-hmm. Or again, what would have happened if some of these agencies maybe had stepped in after repeated reports and, you know, taken her or maybe possibly her siblings as well out of the home?
Yeah.
I don't know. You can't answer that question because it didn't happen. But that's it for our episode on the disappearance of Relisha Rudd. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
I was listening to the voicemails, and the lady that called about the axe man, Gibby thought she had said ass man, and I thought the same thing. I was trying to figure out what in the world is she talking about. They haven't done an episode about an ass man, so it wasn't just Gibby that misheard. It was me too.
Fergie likes a good ass man. Wait, did that sound?
No, it didn't sound good at all. Oh. Yeah, I mean, the ass man of New Orleans. I kind of got that part.
Watch out for that ass man loose in New Orleans.
I can put two and two together, but I mean, you can't say the phrase ass man without thinking about Kramer.
No, you can't.
I mean, that's the first thing that pops into my mind. Hey, ass man.
Yeah, that's right. And that driver's what do you call that thing? License plate. Remember the license plate?
Yeah, it said ass man.
Ass man.
That was the whole part of the show.
Hey guys, this is Adam from Texas. Just wanted to say hi, and I love you guys' podcast. I love all of them. I think they're great. My favorite podcasts, hand down. I'm leaving this message on True Crime All the Time so Gibby can hear it. I've listened to all the episodes, by the way. I've listened to them all. And so one of the episodes, you gave Gibby a hard time because I think he burped or something at the end of episode, and you left the recorder on. Well, my question is maybe Gibby can help with the investigation, is in criminology, episode 48 start at the 7-minute mark, and this one happened at the beginning of the episode, starting at the 7-minute mark and up to about the 7-minute, 15-second mark. I would like to know what that noise is. You got to listen, but it's loud. I have earbuds, and so I can hear it. It cracked me up because it's a mystery sound. Anyway, maybe you can help with that, Gibby, and we can figure this out. Once again, I love you guys, this podcast, and thanks a bunch. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks for the voicemail. Yeah, I don't know. 48. That's going back quite a ways on criminology. And it's hard telling because Morph and I used to tape over Skype using, he used different equipment. So
that's when he ate a lot of chili. So who knows what that noise could have been.
He was in that chili cook-off competition. It was like a year-long thing. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. But I do hear the voicemails on both podcasts.
No, I think he meant criminology.
Oh, I got you now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little slow to the game
yeah.
sometimes. Hey,
let me catch you up.
Yeah.
Hi, guys. It's Carrie calling from Colorado. I was just listening to the thing from Russia. Gibby can tell you how to pronounce it. And you're talking about slab avalanches, and it made me think of this one time that I went to Crested Butte in the mountains in Colorado, not to ski because I'm with Mike Ferguson on that. But anyway, I went there, and because of Pabst Blue Ribbon and other factors, I went into an arm wrestling competition, and I did really good until I went up against this woman whose nickname was Depth Whore, not whore like W-H-O-R-E, whore like H-O-A-R-E, which is the unstable portion of the snow that's underneath the big frozen slab that causes the avalanche to go. And the moral of the story is never ever go up against someone named Depth Whore in any sort of athletic competition, especially if they're like 5'10", 200 pounds. Anyway, obviously also the thing that killed all of those people was meteors. Meteors, and more meteors because they're radioactive and they're hot and they'll shoot your eyeballs out. And there you go. Solved it. Stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
I thought it was a Red Ryder BB gun.
Solved it. She solved it. Okay, so there was a lot to break down there. First of all, there was some PBR, which led to arm wrestling. And PBR will lead to some questionable decisions. Too much.
That you bought it?
Too much PBR. It will lead to questionable decisions. But
remember that one time at CrimeCon we did the arm wrestling match with those other podcasters? You don't remember because you had too much PBR.
Yeah, I might have blacked out that night or something.
Yeah.
I can't arm wrestle anybody with my bad shoulder. Yeah. So
I'm telling you, those girls never looked at us the same after they beat us on that.
That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
So we appreciate all the voicemails, but that's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Crime on Pluto TV. Unravel the mysteries on shows like CSI and Criminal Minds, or follow the clues in Blue Bloods and NCIS. With thousands of free crime movies and TV shows, Pluto TV is the true home of crime. Download the Pluto TV app and start streaming now on live channels and on demand.
You better run for your life.
Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
It's time to turn your daydream into your dream job. Wix gives you the power to turn your passion into a moneymaker with a website that fits your unique vision and drives you towards your goals. Let your ideas flow with AI tools that guide you, but give you full control and flexibility. Manage your business from one dashboard and keep it growing with built-in marketing features. Get everything you need to turn your part-time passion into a full-time business. Go to Wix.com.